So yesterday we did bring you some reports about protest in University of Ibadan. So there's been an update on that matter. But have a look at this report, and then we're going to get some conversation ongoing on that subject matter.
Aggrieved students of Shapade Polytechnic are at the premises of the Ogun State Police Command Ileweron in Abeokuta, the state capital, to protest the killing of their colleague by a suspected hit-and-run driver last week.
We are here today to submit our petition paper to the Nigerian police and making our demands. And what is our demand? Our demand is that the suspected vehicle that was said to have ran or drove into the premises of the NYSC should be fished out.
The Commissioner of Police, just like myself and most of the police officers you are meeting here, we have children in institutions in different places around the globe and particularly in the country. And no parent will want to see, or as we are working here, they will call us that this has happened to your child anywhere and we want to keep quiet about it.
They say the march to the command was necessitated by their desire to get justice for their fellow student, and all these are listed in the petition to the State Commissioner of Police as they demand that the matter be investigated.
We have done our fact findings and we've seen the truth, and it seems these people are trying to hide something from us. The state coordinator of NYC is trying to hide something for us. He's hiding the person, the suspected car that hit our students. Eyewitness claim that the suspected person drove into the NYC camp immediately.
The students claim that the driver of the suspected hit-and-run vehicle drove into the NYC compound, an allegation dismissed by the police authorities.
The alleged vehicle was inspected. There was no single scratch on the vehicle. And this is suggestive of the fact that it may not be the vehicle, because a vehicle that will cause such a fatal accident.
Well, that is clearly not the report for the University of Ibadan protest, so we apologize for that one. So I guess we'll bring it to you much later. But the crux of the matter was that the students of University of Ibadan did hit the street protesting some of the decisions and policies that the school had introduced. Now, we also understand that they had a meeting yesterday with the management of the school, and then there were some resolutions which they also did put up a statement on. So I guess maybe we'll see that later as well. But we'll go ahead and bring in guests this matter. But, you know, part of those concerns and the reasons that came up during that was electricity. And then there's been comments concerning affordability. Can public universities afford the electricity bills that they are charged by the discos in their respective localities? We'll also bring an expert who will join us and shed some light on some of the scenarios concerning electricity, the pricing, the tariff, if you will. But first, let's go to Bolaji Awada, who is the president of University of Ibadan Student Union. He joins us virtually. And thereafter, we'll also have Professor Yemi Oke, who is an electricity expert of University of Lagos. He also will join us. Mr. Bolaji Awada, good morning. Can you hear us?
Good morning, sir. I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, so yesterday you had the protest, and then there was a meeting of which you put up a statement. So could you tell us, what is the current position of things about your protest right now?
Thank you very, very much for the opportunity to be here this morning. So yesterday we had a protest to state our grievances as regards the new policies of the school, to a statement purportedly from the school to rationalize electricity. And after the meeting yesterday, the school denied that they did not put out that statement, and it has been resolved. So everything that we went.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get Bolaji back on. So we do hope that is not the tariff that's causing this. I mean, the electricity supply scenario.
Yes, yes, we got it.
Okay. We lost you for a moment, Bolaji. Looks as though we lost him again.
Okay.
Okay, it's just coming in broken occasionally, so we'll try and go ahead and correct that. But let's go to Professor Okay. We also did tell you, as a matter of fact, a former Vice Chancellor of University of Lagos has been quoted to have said, as things presently stand, no public university can afford the electricity tariffs being charged. They talked about the subvention and how the subvention is just a far cry from the tariffs. And Professor Okay, this is where you come in here in this matter. You've severally spoken up about some of these scenarios, and maybe you could tell us if it's not falling on deaf ears. But this kind of conversation, has it come up on campus, maybe at the Senate or where you were? And if it did, what kind of conversations went on?
Chamberlain and others, we've been having this conversation from time to time. As a matter of fact, as a university, we had anticipated this scenario. I'm a member of staff and Senate member of the University of Lagos, so I'm quite familiar with the challenges of public universities or public institutions vis-a-vis electricity consumption. I'd speculated that a day like this would come. My school, at some point, had to set up a committee to look into it. University of Lagos, at some point, was thinking of self-generating electricity. The partial regime as Minister of Power also tried to do propose IPPs for some federal universities, because there and then we realized the electricity bills of universities would not be affordable. Something was given. Is either the consumers, the community, the university community will pay for it, and when we talk of the university community, we talk of the students essentially, both undergraduate students and graduate students. We talk of university staff and management, and we talk of others. So if the university will need to pay for electricity being consumed by them, it's going to create crisis. The University of Lagos, like the University of Ibadan and other universities, have been threatened by disconnection. And I'm saying it on here for Nigerians to hear.
So
the University Teaching Hospital was actually disconnected at some point. The University of Lagos had been threatened several times of disconnection by the suppliers, by a particular disco. Is this sustainable? It's not sustainable. Are we addressing the concerns? No. The University of Lagos spends millions, hundreds of millions of naira to fuel diesel consumption in student hostels. How much are these students paying for those hostels? You know, Chamberlain, your guess is as good as mine. Any attempt by the management of University of Lagos or University of Ibadan or other universities, public universities in Nigeria, to increase rates of student hostels, not even other bills, not tuition now. My fellow Nigerian students will go up in arms against them. Legitimately, I was an activist while I was in school. Ordinarily, if I was in school, I would have led that kind of protest as a student, because I would need electricity to study and work for my future. So we can't blame them. Who do we blame? We blame the discos. We can't blame the discos. They're in business to make money, and they are threatened, they're challenged financially. We will blame the federal government. Of course, the ball would always stop on the desk of the federal government. And most universities, if you go abroad, even smaller universities do generate their own electricity. How? Because they pay decent fee for those services. And there is huge investment in terms of private-public partnership. My university, in York University, where I graduated, had what we call matching grant. They are allowed to raise money to charge reasonable fees. For instance, if York University or a department raises $500 million, the Ontario government and federal government will match it up with another $500 million. We call it matching grants. The universities there are encouraged to strive to raise money, generate income, and government is matching by encouraging them.
Okay. Prof, I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts for a moment, because I understand that our student union president is back, Mr. Bolaji Aweda. I would like you to quickly, I don't know whether you've heard what Prof has said so far. You have told us that the situation in the University of Ibadan is calm now. You've had conversations with university authorities, and they seem to be listening to you. But, the question is, what is the long-term solution? Because what we heard had sparked the protest was this issue of 10-hour rationing electricity, which the university management has debunked. But given what you know and what we all know about what has happened with electricity tariff and how universities could be impacted, what is the long-term thinking of the student union around this particular problem?
Okay, good morning. I don't know if I'm currently being at.
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead, Mr. Aweda, if you can hear me. It does appear that we do have some audio challenges there. I don't want to put it out to data, but I hope that network connection is better. Yeah. Mr. Aweda, can you hear me? Because it does appear you're speaking, but I can hardly hear you.
I can hear you now. Can
okay, please go ahead. Yes, I was asking you what the long-term solutions were, for the student union of University of Ibadan, given the challenge we all know that universities are facing with electricity tariff.
I think the biggest solution here is for the government to take off the electricity bill from the universities. It's quite evident that almost all universities
Oh, well, I could only hear the first part, which is that government needs to take up the bills. I'm going to come to you, Prof. Do you think that is a feasible solution, that government should pay electricity bills on behalf of universities?
I was a student, as I told you, and I still have that blood flowing in me. I remember years back in the University of Ilorin, there was a power blackout when we were watching a Nigerian match. We went crazily, I wouldn't understand. There was a shutdown, and we went to vandalize. Students actually burned down the generator set, which would have been an alternative to which student raising. And now I'm kind of thinking, benefit of hindsight. I mean, would that be normal? Definitely not. Student will be a student, of course. That's who we are then. But I'm not going to blame them. The question is this: federal government realistically can't afford to take up electricity bills of Nigerian universities. I mean, you and I know that the federal government is struggling with certain economic measures, to jumpstart our economy. And it's not only the students that are consuming this electricity, we even have staff. University lecturers are still asking for more money in terms of reasonable, decent salary. And then you are jacking up the electricity consumption in their offices, in their service apartment. And the reality is that federal government can't reasonably take up the electricity bills. Are we now seeing universities to enjoy a kind of disaggregated tariff, a privileged tariff, that will not be cost-reflective tariff, that will not be service-based? Then we can work that out. Then the private sector should come in, by way of support, by way of endowment, and then the federal government will come in, the state government will come in, the host state government should come in, just like, for instance, I always start the example of my own university there. There's a component of the income of that university that is generated by the York University. There's a component of it that is sent by the Ontario government. There's a component of it that comes from the government of Canada, and there's a component of it that comes from the municipalities, which is Toronto. Because that's the way university should function.
Yeah, but the question is, what should it take for that sort of conversation to happen? Because this has only come to light because the students of the University of Ibadan went on protest.
the protester. But this is not the first time we're saying it. You did mention that, you know, the University Teaching Hospital had been cut off very embarrassingly from electricity supply. Clearly, you know, Professor Ogundipe, who, you know, spoke about this particular matter, there was no protest in University of Lagos before this matter came up at an event where he was. And he quickly mentioned that, look, no university can afford this 330% electricity hike in tariff. Wow. That, you know, universities were only getting 150 million naira in subvention. University like the University of Lagos was had 1.7 billion naira to pay in electricity bills. These are humongous figures when you look at what it is we're talking about. So what should it have taken when we were talking about this cost-reflective tariff? Shouldn't we have been thinking that there will be institutions that will not be able to afford this tariff?
We are turning in a dangerous terrain, I mean, dangerous direction. And as you said, I'm not saying something new. I mean, most of these conversations I've had like 10 years at the minimum, and that you know. So electricity use across, I mean, now, after 15 years, we are now going the direction of state electricity regulatory regime that had speculated about 15 years ago. This same thing we are talking about. There's no way universities, not a single university, will be able to afford value-based electricity bills. None. Professor Ogundipe struggled using his personality to negotiate things, to make things happen, to plead, and because he enjoyed the kind of the horror around the private sector. Being a researcher himself, was able to talk to them. He did most of those things on his PR. But the current administration is also doing the same thing. But is this sustainable? It's not sustainable. And the university is going to go in this particular direction. We're going to look at the number of students per program and the value of that program. For instance, if you have 200 students in a particular program, for instance, I know when I speak of medicine and law, it will attract the attention of Nigerians. As we have 200, well, I mean, we have 50 students in the medical school. I will try to calculate the cost of training 50 students or 500 students in a particular program. If you look at their electricity consumption, look at their laboratory requirements, if the university cannot afford it, the university will just step down that cost. Any program that is not viable, that the university cannot sustain, the university will have to step it down. It will not offer it. Because there's no way university cannot offer it. Because there's no way university cannot offer it.
Prof, one of the issues that I was going to raise with you is what you just mentioned about the state electricity supply systems. I'm just wondering whether or not, from what you know, from what you can see, we're prioritizing academic education, particularly at the university levels, given this body language. This is not the first time we're hearing of this, particularly in the universities. I remember, I think it was some time ago, you talked about the teaching hospital being blacklisted or blacked out because of this particular issue we're talking about. So it just leads to the question whether or not we are prioritizing our academic institutions who are supposed to be the brains of the nation, where we're supposed to draw people who will come up with ideas that will take the nation forward.
We are definitely not doing that. We are not doing that. And I said something that appeared scary. I give somebody a picture that, oh, we're saying this is what it takes to train an engineer. This is what it takes to train a pilot. This is what it takes to train a medical doctor. And the government and the stakeholders are saying, hey, we can't afford to train them. Just train them anyhow. The university will be forced to train a doctor anyhow and use those doctors to the system, because that's the best the university could do. And they'll be performing surgeries and attending to our medical needs. We're going to train engineers. Engineers, an average engineer that ought to be to spend 100 million naira per head before becoming a sound graduate. The system can't afford to support him with more than 10 million naira. Definitely it's going to be quarter-baked, not half-baked. Then we're going to yield them out there to be practicing engineering, to be constructing those bridges and roads. We're going to train pilots. because government is only able to afford 5 million naira to train a pilot as against 500 million naira. We need to train the pilot anyhow based on the available resources, and yet the pilot have to go and be flying aeroplane and private jets. All is not well. And that's what the investor has been saying. But saying, hey, we can't go this route. At the time, he's saying, just keep trying, train doctors, train nurses, train lawyers. If you go to train lawyers, you are going to be turning our judicial system upside down because we can't afford to train them properly. Of course, they have to graduate. If they are not graduating, another set of students will come. So this time we're under pressure to continue churning out graduates. Some will pick up at the end of the day in practice. Some will never really be able to pick, and they will be practicing that kind of profession at a very pedestrian level. And it's not good for the system. And that's why you're having all kinds of things happening in our politics. As rightly said, we have not prioritized or given sufficient attention to academic institutions. If you must get to track, you must start from there. The scientists, the physicians, the doctors, the engineers, the statisticians, the accountant. We go to train an accountant who cannot even balance our cash flow, even manage our economy.
Now, with that information put out, yeah, my apologies, Prof. With that information put out, I'm wondering, how even the students themselves feel about that. How hopeful they are that the qualifications that they're going to get, the certification they're going to get, is actually something that can take them anywhere, particularly given the conditions through which they have to learn. I'm not sure if Mr. Aweda is with us right now, in the studio, whether or not he's been able to rejoin us back, on the program. Is Mr. Aweda there with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Now, you heard, Prof talk now, and I'm just wondering how that makes you feel, the students feel, about the kind of environment through which you have to learn and this added electricity burden on the students. How does it make the students feel? Is this something that the university management understands?
It makes us feel very, very bad. I mean, I agreed with Prof from the beginning, but when he started talking about shifting the cost of electricity, take for example, to the students, it's not feasible. You can't have students pay 250 million on electricity per month. It's not sustainable. Nobody has the money in this country. For students of public universities, we're in public universities in the first place because people cannot afford to go to the private universities and stuff. And we believe that is where education should be affordable. That is where we can go to. The only solution to this matter is for the government to either take up electricity bill, take it off from the universities, or subsidize it to a very, very large extent. Universities are crumbling. It's not happening. It's not a problem peculiar to any university alone. It's happening all over. Students of UniBen protested earlier this month over our power outage since May. How can we have institutions of higher learning where we are supposed to breed future technocrats not have electricity for over 1 month? It's worrisome and it's very, very bad. The only solution to this, and if there's a lingering crisis, the government has to look at it critically. The lingering crisis is that all universities cannot afford to pay for electricity due to the high tariff. Whatever the government is supposed to do is to look at why all universities cannot pay and then look for a way to solve it, either by taking off the electricity bill from them or by subsidizing it. We can't leave it.
Okay. Well, Mr. Aweda, I was actually going to ask you a second question. Okay. Go ahead. We can hear you.
A lot of things are tied to electricity on campus. Without electricity, security is poor. Everything is bad. I think that since electricity is priority and it's a big problem for all universities in Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Aweda,
the government should do something.
When you say government, and that's where I'm going next, when you say government, are you talking about the federal government or the state governments? Because now, from what the Prof said, the states now have the authority by law to generate electricity themselves. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, you also know that the reality is stuck in the face of everyone. Everything is increasing. I know that food costs are increasing, but then the universities have to pay teachers, the people who teach students in class. They also are expecting one way or the other that their salaries will be increased, and the running cost of the universities will also have to increase. Do you think that is something realistic that parents of students in the university should also consider in the conversations that are to come?
No, if you're talking about payment of salaries of teachers, I think you mean lecturers. Salaries of lecturers is currently being paid by the government.
Well, I'm aware of that.
States,
I'm aware of that. I'm just asking whether you think it is realistic for schools, particularly universities, to increase costs of anything that the students have to pay. Do you think it's realistic?
Well, it is not realistic because we already even have all of these fees added to fees of students. And the truth of the matter is that it will keep increasing. How long are we going to continue paying higher and higher for electricity bill? How long? The electricity bill over the last 1 year, electricity tariff over the last 1 year has been increased how many times? So that means that today when you ask people to pay for electricity and they've paid for utility bill, tomorrow you will tell them that no, this thing has increased, please bring more. The only sustainable thing is for the government to take over payment of electricity bill from universities, since that is a common problem for everyone. That solves the issue to a very, very large extent.
We're winding down on this now. So the concern now is, yes, we also know the National Assembly will tell you, look, the law is there, they review these tariffs almost on a regular basis. Some private universities tell us we overcame this by coming up with an IPP. So for you, what would you recommend as the solution before we go?
Okay, you're talking to me now. Okay, yes. What I would recommend? See, it's a worrisome trend. I have had to lecture and teach my students using rechargeable lamp, using torchlight from our phones, and got the students to light up the classroom, and we have to do what we have to do. It's a bad situation. I've personally experienced it. So how do we go? Government should continue with the IPP structure that Fashola proposed for universities. One, government should step in to take up a quantum of electricity bills of the university. Two, maybe the student should also be willing, maybe with the student loan scheme now, the component of the fee should go for utilities, while the universities also should try to scale up internally generated funds to augment some of these payments or bills. Then the schools should also give concession rates to universities, while post-state government should also do something in the realm of licensing private stakeholders. Because if, for instance, Lagos State government licenses a disco in Lagos, make concession unilag to them, and they work for the multi-notice. Of course, maybe they should, private individuals, private investors should also assist the universities in generating electricity. Right. And the concession bills with that aggregated solutions here and there, I think that will be a way out of it. But it's not the fact that government alone can shoulder that responsibility, because there are so many public services calling for attention in the hospitals, in the prisons, in everywhere, in services, military. So it's going to be a huge burden on government that is struggling economically. But then it's something that is workable.
All right. We do thank you very much indeed, Yamoke, Professor of Energy and Electricity Law, University of Lagos. We've also had Bolaji Awada, President, University of Ibadan, Student Union. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time this morning. And speaking of which, Prof did mention student loan. We'll talk about that in just a moment. We'll get some response to, is it working? Can it be accessed? What are the challenges? Find out in a moment.